All right, in our previous video, we did the rectangular pattern tool, and we looked at how we could use that to repeat a feature. So you could just draw the feature once and then repeat it multiple times. In this video, we're going to look at the circular pattern tool, which will allow us to do the same thing, but now instead of repeating it in a line, we'll repeat the feature around a center point. So you can see on the screen that I have created this wheel with 3 spokes. And so the circular pattern tool will allow us to create one spoke and then copy it around the center point to give us the 3 spokes. So we'll just create one of those and then use circular pattern to create the other 2. I have a little bit of a guide here to show how I made it originally. And so we're just going to go through this and do it again. We can get the dimensions off this. It's a little hard to read, but we can see that this outer edge of the rim had a diameter of 0.75, and the inner diameter of that rim was offset by 0.05. And similarly, the center part had an outer diameter of 0.2 and was offset by 0.05. And so that's how I'm going to create that. So we'll get into Inventor here, and we'll start a new sketch. And we'll start by making our outer diameter of 0.75, and I offset that by 0.05. I could have used the circle tool again to make that inner one. I just chose to do the offset tool because I like it, and I knew that what the offset was. So again, we have an offset of 0.05 there. And so I can finish that sketch, and we'll extrude both of these rings 0.25. And so if I go back into our drawing, we can see that it tells us that the spoke is 0.2 inches wide and 0.1 inches thick. And so that's what I'm going to create next. So I'm going to start a sketch right on the face of that. And in this case, we have a couple different rectangle tools, but I found that the center point rectangle actually works best because I can lock that right on the center point there. We can come up, I can make that 0.2 wide because that's what our guide told us to do. And then I'm just going to kind of fix it to that circle there, which it didn't create a constraint. So I'm going to go ahead just to fully constrain this and do that. But it kind of snapped to that ring. That's how I knew I had it at the right spot. From here, I don't need both sides of this, so I'm going to trim off. Nope. And before I trim, I need to project geometry. So I need to project this ring here, and now I think I should be able to trim off part of that bottom. I shouldn't need to trim it all off, so that should do right there. And I'll finish the sketch. And now, if I've done all this right, it'll allow me just to extrude that spoke part. Now it said the guide told us to make it 0.1 thick, and right now it's sticking up. I actually need it to go back, but that inventor thought I wanted to remove material, and I don't. So I do want to go ahead and click that option to add material instead. And I'll hit OK. And so there we are with that. Now our guide also shows to add some chamfers. If you go back and look at it, we can see that those chamfers were going to be 0.05. And there's one spoke. So now I have one spoke finished, and I can use a circular pattern tool to create the other 2. So that's going to be up here in the pattern panel. I can kind of hover it over it, and it'll again give me some kind of guide that I can use to help out. When I click on it, we get our options as usual. Just like with rectangular pattern, I can do an individual feature, or I can actually copy the entire object. We're just going to go with a feature here. So I can click the feature in the graphics window, but I like to select it from the model panel over here. So as I look at these different extrusions that I've done, it'll highlight the part. So I definitely want to do extrusion 2, that's the main spoke, but I also want to get these chamfers. So I'm going to click on both of those so that it creates a pattern for both. Now next I need to choose an axis. Any circle will work. I could click on this, this, or this. They all have the same center point. So any circular thing, it'll just use the center point of that circle. And then we can see we have a couple options here for how many repeats we want and over what angle we want it. So we want 3 spokes, so I'll put that in. And we want 360 degrees, but just to look at it, I could make it 180 and it'll show us a preview of what it would look like if it did 3 copies over an angle of 180 degrees instead of 360. But we want 360. And so I'll put that in. And there we go. There is our wheel. So that's pretty much it for this video. Another thing you can do with you can do a lot of things with circular pattern, but here's some snowflake designs that I made using circular pattern as well. So you would just make one side of that, and then you would repeat that around, and you could create that. And so after you create this wheel, I would encourage you to try to make your own snowflake. That is going to conclude it for this particular video.